Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. We're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Thursday. It is January the 9th, and it is our last show for the week because I just want to say it right up front because otherwise I'll forget. I'm jumping on a plane tonight, and I am flying out to D.C./whatever, Virginia, and we're going to do Timcast tomorrow. So no show tomorrow. I'm going to be doing Timcast, a big show on Sunday, and you can get it early if you join us over on Locals. If you guys want to hear the bit that we have with Steve Baker, it's 3 hours. It's heavy. We cover a lot of ground about January 6th, which is something we're going to talk about a little bit today as well, which may not be on everybody's mind because California is on fire, but it's on my mind. So today is one of those shows I'm super amped up about. I like no particular reason. I woke up, my brain is clear, and sometimes I feel like we're tapping into the governing dynamics of what's happening in the world. Sometimes it feels almost like revelation, and that seems kind of arrogant, but I don't know any other way to say it. I don't think the thoughts come from me. And so today is one of those days where I'm going to share something that I think makes perfect sense. I have comedians. I have Donald Trump, but I repeat myself. I have we have governors and mayors of cities and state like California that are experiencing a crisis. I'm going to weave it all together. We're going to talk about DEI. We're going to talk about the failures of DEI. We're going to talk about the opportunity that it presents as well, because I think the funniest thing about being, at least in the situation I've been in, is that every time God has kind of slapped a door shut, another one has opened up. The smallest example, I'm just going to give it right off the top of my head before I forget as well. The guy that we showed you yesterday, Spencer Evans, who is the field office special agent in charge in Las Vegas, investigating the Livensburger explosion in front of Trump Tower. That guy is the same guy that kicked me out of the FBI. Isn't that interesting? Cash may or may not know his name. So I'm just saying. All right, we're going to get into a bunch of wild stuff today. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. So if you would do me a favor, make sure you like the video at some point. If you like what we're doing, if you are listening to us, give us a comment. I'm seeing all your comments over on Spotify. I very much appreciate them. I read them all, even if I don't respond to them all. So there you go. You guys are part of this show just as much as anybody, as much as me. You really are, because if I'm just here talking to myself, then I'm a crazy person. Let's start off with a sponsor. We got a new sponsor. I'm kind of excited about them as well. It shows that the show has potential for you all, that it's a sales mechanism, because that's what we do. We do sell ads. We tell you ads because it's a product. But these are ones that I actually use, and I've already signed up with these guys. I'm going to go ahead and tell you the website. It's kyle.patriot-protect.com. Sounds wordy. It's really easy. My name, kyle.patriot-protect.com. That will take you to the landing page. Patriot Protect is a security service. What they do is they go out and scrub the internet across all the data brokers and all these individual like people search sites that will put your name and your information up. I actually just got a call from a reporter who probably found one on there and called my wife. So screw you, dude. Don't do that. If you want to get your name removed from this stuff, I have got to do one for my wife now too to get her off the sites. What they do is they just go and they knock out, and that's going to eliminate things like scammers and robocalls and cyber phishing attacks and all kinds of things. People that are trying to bother you. It can be debt collectors that have garbage debt. I had somebody that was tracking me down for $50 for a DirecTV, subscription that I haven't had in 25 years one time. And I had them reach out and they were going to screw with my security clearance. These things all get wiped up basically. And then once you sign up for it with the annual subscription, they're going to keep doing it 24/7 for a year. It comes out to about $5 a month. It's a pretty good deal. I think it's worth time, especially for your elderly sort of family members. If you have a, like a mother-in-law or father-in-law, your own parents that you want to look after, and you just want to set them up with this and kind of fire and forget, this is the way to do. Again, you save 15% off the annual subscription with my name, KYLE, kyle.patriot-protect.com. It's in the show description, so check them out. We'll talk more about them soon, but I think you guys are I think it's actually a worthwhile service, especially with what we got going on in the world. A lot of scammers. Ready? Let's do this. All right, we're hyped up. I am hyped up. Here it is. Let's start off right off the bat. I've had this story on tap for a couple of days. I wanted to bring it to our attention because I'm not done with January 6th because it's January of 2025. We are now 4 years after it. Yeah, we may have passed the date of January 6th, but there are people that are languishing in prison. And some of the most egregious cases are those of the Proud Boys, especially guys like Enrique Tarrio, who were not even there. They're out there reaching out for a pardon. I hope that happens for him. I will lobby with whatever capabilities I have that he does get that. The man wasn't even on the grounds. But it does remind us that there's a lot more going on. There always was a lot more going on with January 6th. And this was always a media narrative attack on people, including like the story that they were white supremacists. If you guys listened to JD Rivera, we had a nice conversation on this this last Sunday. One of the things he said, he's a Mexican guy. In fact, his words, not mine. He said, I grew up doing wetback jobs, which, by the way, that is a very common phrase for people working in that kind of space. And I've heard it my whole life. Doesn't necessarily mean something nasty. It has been weaponized to act like this is inappropriate, but it's like, no, that's just what they call it. And that's what people inside that culture called it. And then you've got guys like Enrique Tarrio. You can look at his skin color right there on the screen. You can listen to his name, Enrique Tarrio. How is he a white supremacist? It's more nuanced than that. I got into it a little bit about all this stuff with Steve Baker. There's some deeper pieces to it. I just want you to know that I'm still tracking that they are looking for these pardons. So I hope that we do not let this thing fall. And there was also something else that was happening on January 6th. I'm going to give you a teaser. This is a self-promo. I'm just going to tell you up front, but I'm telling you, you haven't heard this before. There's a little music. It's a little bit much. I'm not the best at creating a teaser. This is my friend Steve Baker. This is our Sunday conversation coming up. So you're not going to get us tomorrow for the normal podcast. You are going to get 3 hours and change. Plus, there's a Timcast episode coming out. So stand by. Here's Steve Baker. This might actually kind of interrupt some of the things. These are real wild facts. And if you haven't heard it yet, buckle up.
You ready for this, Kyle? A Department of the Interior IG report which said not only were LRAD DEWs authorized for use in Lafayette Square on June 1st of 2020, they were in fact used, and that people were running away screaming and confused. What I saw on January 6th, I saw three different types of people that day. I saw bad people doing bad things. I saw good people doing good things. I also saw otherwise good people doing some really stupid stuff. We also had three people whose heart stopped in a very small space, less than 100 yards apart from each other. What we know, in quick review, is that elements of our military were present, embedded in the crowd on January 6th. We know beyond any shadow of a doubt that the tactical units of every three-letter federal agency was in and around the Capitol. They were frickin' in the building already. The prosecutors did not inform defense or the court that both of those guys had been disciplined for telling lies. Let's get it all out there. Let's get the truth.
Yeah, did you catch that? Directed energy weapons documented in federal documents showing that they were going on. And we bring the receipts on that, and Steve lets you know as well. I just want you guys to understand this story was always bigger. This thing's been going on for years. Steve started telling me about this probably 18 months ago. I think he was looking into it for 3 years. Yeah. Okay. The other thing that we've seen in this country is this prolific narrative. It's been marched out by the left. And in many ways, I think we saw Donald Trump take the first really serious hack law. You know, it's a multi-headed animal, but I think he took one of the big heads off in November. And it's just exposing itself. It's the nature of things. The pendulum swing is coming back towards people who are going to be sensible. Here's the governing dynamic I want you to consider. Okay? This is like sort of a heady topic for me. It's called ecological succession. So remember that term. Ecological succession. Some of you already know what this means, probably because you're either firefighters or you're gardeners. You work in that field, or you're really obsessed with seeing things grow. Ecological succession is a cycle of growth, destruction, decay, and rebirth that mirrors almost every single archetypal thing that we have. It's the story of our religion. It's the story of Christianity. It's the story of civilization in many ways. Build up, get to excess, get to too much to sustain, break down, chaos, and from that chaos, up comes something else. California right now is in that third trimester, that nasty thing just before you get the rebirth. And I'm going to try to prove it to you. That's going to be the supposition today. Here's one. This was sent to me by my buddy George Hill, who I'm going to be sitting on the Timcast with tomorrow. Governor Healy, Massachusetts, is that right? That's usually what George cares about. So Governor Healy is in trouble because she has been downplaying the failure of the state, which is to say a very leftist regime. It's about as blue in Massachusetts as it is in California. They have equally stupid gun laws. They make equally stupid footings on crime. And now what you have are the most victimized people. They are the most destroyed. The state-run shelters, housing illegal immigrants, migrants, local residents. They are full of allegations of rape, domestic violence, possessions of guns, illegal drugs. It turns out if you give people an opportunity to just live free and high on the hog, what will they do? They will engage in their basest instincts. If you do not have a system of law and order and people of goodwill are not involved in doing it, it decays. Man is a fallen creature. Again, this is very biblical stuff. This actually goes back to, it doesn't matter whether you look at Christianity. You could even go before that in the precursors, the Greek and the Romans. They understood this. Man left to his own devices does dumb things, bad things. So when you start taking away the need to go out there and support yourself, when you start taking the need away to actually engage in productive sort of transactions with society, you get proliferations of crime. You give these people no option to get out. They can't help themselves. They're just going to hang out there and they're going to just wallow in it. Here's another thing that's not going to be obvious to you, but this is a DEI. This is the only photo I could find that looked like it was going to fit in my space here. This is a CBS story. I'm going to just touch on it, okay? So that's Massachusetts. That's bad policies. They have very similar to what goes on in California. Here's something nationwide. And if you listen to any of the talking about this, you see it regularly. There's a shortage of primary care doctors. This is CBS's Health Watch. It comes down to money and respect. It comes down to money and respect. Does it, though? It does, but not the way that they think. The analysis on this is terrible. Okay, the claim is that we are short primary care physicians. I've been watching primary care physicians and sort of the need for this thing for a very long time. My best friend growing up is a primary care physician. He's a family medicine specialist, and there's a shortage of it. So I've been watching medical schools and the way that they pick people up and the way that they sort the quality and the way that physicians self-sort for probably coming up on like 25 years. In fact, when I was a kid, my buddy's email address included MD, the letters, or the word to be, and then the year that he was going to become a physician. He knew when he was a freshman in high school that was going to be the case, and he became a physician. Very, very few people that are young men have the clarity of thought to say, I am going to pursue this thing and do it forever. The one thing that I remember my buddy Rob saying, and at some point we might start trying to do a regular bit with him, because at least once a month I would like to have somebody that I trust in the medical field, which is very few people, someone that I know is very intelligent, come on and share some information with you guys. So if you're interested in that, let me know. You can do it over on Locals. That'd be cool. KyleSeraphin.com is the Locals channel. You guys can let me know if that's interesting to you. Put it in the comments, put it in the show, description, so on and so forth. Put it down there if you're watching on Rumble, whatever. So Dr. Rob, he said that I would have been the Rudy of surgery. He always wanted to be a neurosurgeon, okay? And he said he couldn't do it. He got to see what surgeons look like and the capabilities they had, and he self-assessed that he didn't have it. And I'm confident that he is as good a family medicine practitioner as there is. He's smart. He's compassionate. He's a loving person. He's a father, right? He reads frequently. When I hit him with a question, he writes back and says things that he just goes like, this is the answer. If you want to look up any of these terms, it's in writing for me. He'll give me paragraphs and paragraphs on simple questions because he thinks about this stuff, because he's passionate about the thing that he's professional in. That's what we need. What's funny is CBS said that what we need to do is get more government money involved. That's the real problem. The issue is that we are not actually subsidizing the subspecialties. And if you get into a very niche part of medicine, you can make a lot more money. So there should be more government money. Do you understand that these people always see the same solution? It's always the same, and it's always really dumb. There's a cache of federal and pharmaceutical company grants. They determine the size and the prestige of the particular subspecialty. So if there's money behind it, federal and pharmaceutical company grants. Where do the pharmaceutical companies get their money? Well, they sort of extort it out of the federal government in a lot of ways. It's shocking when you read this, how ignorant they are about how this stuff works. And yeah, it costs a fortune to go to medical school. My buddy, who's really bright, I think he had 2 patents, or he had 2 patentable technologies by the time he got out of undergrad, because he was in biomedical engineering, and he came up with objectively better solutions than were existing on the market at the time. And then he went to the people that make them, and they were like, yeah, like, what would it cost us to do the regulation to get it done? It's not even worth us exploring it. So he designed a brand new and a new metallic process for creating an intracranial aneurysm clip as an undergrad or as a graduate student. Sorry, a graduate, a senior, whatever you want to call it, in undergrad. Does that make sense? So senior year, undergraduate, that was like his capstone project. And he met with the guy who designed the original intracranial aneurysm clip, the one that is being used right now. And the guy was like, oh yeah, dude, yours is way better. But there's no way they're going to go through the R&D and the FDA approval to get it done. Government's in the way. Government is the problem. Government is not the solution. But everybody always thinks it is if you're on the political left. Okay, so I'm making this argument to you. Here's another really funny one. Another little argument, little piece, we're building it up here. A new federal rule. Do you guys remember we announced this months and months ago? This was something that Kamala Harris was trying to do to buy off voters. New federal rule will remove medical debt from credit reports. That's from ABC News. It would ease and erase the estimated $49 billion in unpaid medical debts from credit reports of roughly 15 million Americans. 2 problems with this. Number 1, why is medicine so expensive? Because the government is involved with it. Objectively, that's the case. If you are paying high premiums, it's because you are paying for the people who cannot afford it. You are paying into a system for folks that basically are unwilling or unable. And that's not terrible, because the government mandates it, though, it becomes a real problem, especially when they have to treat people that come in that do not have real problems. I used to work on an ambulance, folks. I know what the cabulance looks like. The cabulance is when somebody is homeless and they want to go to the emergency room because it's closer to a homeless shelter. So they call 911, or they fake an emergency so that someone takes them in. And we all pay for it at the most high rate there is, the emergency center. Now, if you're going to remove medical debt from these credit reports, healthcare companies and health insurance companies and the people that are trying to make credit decisions, they make money by assessing your reliability to pay your bills. Do you think they are not going to find a substitute? Honest question. If I told you that you can no longer look at data that will help you assess credit worthiness because it is no longer going to be on the report, will they not start finding another way to do it? If you don't pay your medical bills, you might not pay other bills. It's an indication of where your financial status is. Are they fair? No. But again, government getting involved to solve a government-created problem is always the wrong answer. And this is more of it. They're trying to buy off people that think in one dimension. It is a one-dimensional attempt. It is people who fail to see second and third order consequences of really, really stupid decisions. Okay? And we're starting to see a little bit of the backswing on it. I'm going to start telling you some of the backswing on this. I wanted to assess the problem. Obviously, fires in Los Angeles, like parts of Southern California, burning, it's a major issue. It's a major issue because it has a human cost. But from that fire, I think we will see renewal. And the most, maybe unlikely to some people, but one of my favorite thinkers is Adam Carolla. Is that weird to you guys? I love Adam Carolla. It's like outside of Andrew Klavan, he's my favorite podcast. And the reason why is because Adam Carolla, even though he's wealthy, even though he has a lot of influence, He spent time in radio listening to a lot of people. He spent time in comedy clubs listening to a lot of people, because that's how you become funny. You understand what the audience knows. And he worked in the trades. He worked with his hands, and he built houses, and he was a carpenter, and he has physical skills that transfer to the real world. That's why I like Adam Carolla. He's also not afraid of anyone, just because he's got enough money to just tell him to go F off. So I've got two arguments we're going to make from Adam Carolla, in addition to the argument that we make with Donald Trump. One could say two comedians. Hang around. That's where we're going. So that's coming up next. Before we do, we're going to say thanks to the sponsors that keep us going. Again, one of the sponsors is something that you guys should be thinking about. How much shenanigans are going on right now? And they're going on, not just, Donald Trump didn't just solve them. So the wellness company, you could find them at twc.health/Kyle. You have to ask yourself if the globalists are gearing up for a pandemic scare after failing at the ballot box in November, just weeks before Donald Trump's inauguration. California Governor Gavin Newsom was declaring bird flu state of emergency. Now he's screwed with fires, granting himself sweeping powers reminiscent of the COVID-19 policies. And this comes after a severe case of H5N1 bird flu reported in Louisiana. Critics like Nicholas Huchner, they warn that the pandemic could weaponize challenges against Trump's agenda, including the nomination of RFK Jr. to lead HHS. So you have to say, is this a health crisis or a power play? I think we have an indication. Last summer, Dr. Peter McCullough warned about the bird flu, linking the virus's rapid spread to gain-of-function research, which is now a common practice at labs globally. Dr. Peter McCullough urges early prevention just in case. And a reminder and a recommendation that the Contagion Emergency Kit from the Wellness Company, his medical board approved the solution with 5 critical life-saving medications. It's an option for you. It's got ivermectin, it's got Tamiflu, a nebulizer, hydroxychloroquine, and every household can now have access to these sometimes hard-to-get medications because your doctor doesn't want to prescribe them in advance. In the event of another pandemic, you can take your health care and put it in your own hands. You can get it by filling out a digital intake form, and your kit only takes 1 to 2 weeks to arrive. Do not wait until you are waiting and seeing the plan unfold in front of you. Stay ready for the unexpected. It's twc.health/Kyle. Again, twc.health/Kyle. The code KYLE will save you $32 off that kit, plus free shipping, U.S. residents only. Give them a look. Let's do the next little bit here. You guys ready? This is the backswing. This is what it looks like. Ruben Gallego, just elected into the Senate. He's back in the Lake and Riley Act. Why? Because he's in Arizona, and that seat is tenuous at best. It may be leaning blue, but there are people that live on the border that see the realities of what we're talking about. And the government solution needs to be empowering law enforcement at the state and local level to get after it. So Ruben Gallego, he said he's going to co-sponsor it, along with other Democrats. We showed Fetterman the other day. Some of these people are reading the writing on the wall, and they understand that tacking to the left is only going to burn them, and they will be the casualties in the ashes. This is actually a pretty good thing. If the left and the right can get back to where we were, let's say in the late 80s and the early 90s, where we disagreed on how to do things, but not the why, just the how, then that means we understand that we have the same values. It's critical. It's so critical that we find a middle ground where we can at least just disagree in good faith. It's the bad faith arguments that are bad. All right? Why are they on that crazy trip? A lot of it has to do with foreign influence, I think. And then people want to believe a bunch of really bad stuff. Here's a great example of it. You know that Dianne Feinstein had a Chinese, a chauffeur for years. In addition to that, there are other Chinese sympathizers, people who basically align with the ideas of the Chinese Communist Party, pushing a lot of this crap into these folks' ears. This is Linda Sun. She was an advisor to Kathy Hochul, and she's talking about DEI. Now, why would the Chinese government, she's been indicted, she's not convicted yet, but she's been indicted for essentially working on behalf of the Chinese government. Why would they keep investing in pushing this stuff into the ears of Democrat politicians? And then secondly, why are Democrats open to hearing it? Do you think it's bad faith, or are they just really that dumb? Sometimes I think they are actually that dumb. I don't think they're actually doing it nefariously. I think they have people like this that sound articulate and intelligent, and they are moving it. And then some people came there already radicalized. So you've got a mixture of dummies on their own party that are radicalized to do bad things, and then whispering little pushes from places. You want to talk about the Russian interference in our election? The Chinese are far more concerning because they're going after the mechanisms in power. Listen to Linda Sun talk about DEI.
I think, when people say diversity and inclusion, I think everybody agrees, or most people generally agree that it's a good thing, right? But I think right now we also need to bring in the word equity, right? Diversity is when you say that there's, many different types of people with different backgrounds, and they're all, invited to the table. Inclusion is when, we include all of their ideas. But equity is when we make sure that all of the people who are at the table have equal access to making sure that their ideas and their thoughts are heard. And unfortunately, I think some of the statistics that you quoted is that we don't have that much leadership or representation.
We don't have that much leadership or representation. You have a ton of it. You have an absolute metric crap ton of it. These people love it. And the dummies and the dim bulbs go up there and they mimic this stuff. Why? Because it sells to the people that don't understand how it works. It sounds compassionate to have these things. It's the opposite is true. This is a little CNN clip. First of all, I want you to listen to the following. Scott Jennings says something that should be objectively obvious. You don't really care about the skin color of the firefighter that's going to come and stop the blaze that's going to burn up all of your worldly possessions. Okay? You shouldn't. It causes this storm of fools. And you know what? I actually wanted to show you guys this as well. Look at this picture of doctors, by the way. Black female up front, very light skinned black female, but black female. Behind her, another female. In the far back, male. And that male has darkish skin. Now, that may be representative of doctors right now, but it's not representative of the people that wanted to be doctors, particularly in my era growing up. Just saying. Why does that have to be the thing? Why are we putting black female up front? Well, probably because you have these myths being propagated by absolute communist talking points, like people like Jasmine Crockett, who we've proven on this show before. We've proven to you that she doesn't sound like this. She doesn't sound like a dollar store Cardi B in real life. She has an articulate presentation. She's an attorney. She is not dumb, and she sounds like everybody else. She sounds like an articulate, educated human being. But when she gets on these programs, she's doing an act. In the same way that the media does an act in front of you. They are performing, and here she is performing. But watch this. Scott Jennings says something reasonable. You hear a bunch of noises because everyone gets really upset. You have 3 black females sitting at the table. I'm just saying that's a disproportionate representation. So CNN is pretty funny when they do this stuff. If they think we can't see it, I'm calling your attention to it as you're seeing it. If you're just listening, listen to the rabble and then listen to Jasmine Crockett try to make an articulation for something. The most educated group of people in America are black women. I don't believe you unless you skewed the movement to be able to allow people to get in there, because they just don't have the black women are doing all kinds of other things. They're not going to college en masse and becoming the most educated. And if they are the most educated, it's not natural. It's not a natural progression. It should be represented across, apparently these people want equity. They want things like diversity. Why would you be shoving people in where they don't belong? And I say that as someone who's worked with some very competent black women and a lot of really incompetent black women, where I looked around and went, they're the most common person in the federal government, black women, between the ages of about 35 and 55. They're all single moms. They all work jobs that basically require a high school diploma, and they all work jobs that they don't actually do. Their entire job is showing up on time and leaving on time and getting a paycheck. Am I sad to say that? No. It's not racist to recognize that when you go in, the average employee is sitting there with a space heater under their desk with a blanket on their lap, watching TV programs for lunch, and you better not interrupt her while she's doing lunch. And I used to call the mail room, which is a skillless job at the FBI, the nail room. The only thing the nail room was ever good for was painting their nails and pointing to you sometimes where the envelopes for FedEx were. Their real job was to send evidence around the country. You'd think that would be something of value for a federal law enforcement agency. There were 3 people in there. They were all black, 2 women, 1 man. None of them did anything ever. I never could get any help in that space. And it was their full-time job. I saw this all over the country, people. I saw it from Portland to Washington field office. I've seen it down in Texas. I see it everywhere, and so have you. And if we're being honest about it, Jasmine Crockett probably has seen it too. Here's where it gets really funny, because as we get into where these things, when these people start running into the reality of their choices, man, it burns them. Literally burns their houses down. CNN.
You might have recall a news story from last year. There was some interest in the fire departments and the firefighters in California. And the interest was that there were too many white men who were firefighters, and we need to have a program in California to make sure we don't have enough white men as firefighters. So we have BEI, we have budget cuts, and yet I'm wondering now, if your house was burning down, how much do you care what color the firefighters
you
are?
can respond and then we'll...
Listen, I am so tired. You know what? There was an article that just came out that said that actually the most educated demographic in this country right now is black women. So let me be clear. Because you are a woman, or because I know that some of the right has been sharing these photos of the fact that I believe that the fire chief may be a woman or something, that has nothing to do with it. We are looking at qualifications. What diversity, equity, and inclusion has always been about is saying, you know what? Open this up. Don't just look at the white men. Open it up and recognize that other people can be qualified.
Give me a freaking break. Open this up. What are you talking about? She's my age, by the way. She's 43. So we went to school at the same time. And what I knew, and all of my friends knew, and so did all of you, most of you, is that a guy who has white-colored skin has to perform significantly better when he's younger. Like in the 90s, coming out of high school, I had a friend who had a 25% Puerto Rican, lineage. He got a full scholarship for less. I had a guy that was in my class that was a moron. And he was really fat too, but that's neither here nor there. And Chris ended up getting a full scholarship to like Vanderbilt. Whereas my buddy Rob, who was infinitely smarter, struggled to pay his way through Boston University. Why would that be? Why would someone who was way smarter have to work much harder? Because Chris, he had Guatemalan roots. So we gave them a hand up. It's never been about fairness. It's been about some sort of communist-like equalization and punishment. And of course, the minute that he says it, the minute that Scott Jennings says something with that kind of smug look that he has, you've got this woman who I actually thought was a lot. I would have guessed that she was 28 based on how ignorant she acts. Nope. You want to see what the results of this stuff is? It's really simple. There's no water when you go to the fire hydrant. Here's what's going on in California. Enjoy this one.
We saw an apartment building engulfed in flames. I saw the fire engine pull up this afternoon. A fire captain have one of his firefighters attach a hose to a hydrant, and that hose didn't fill up, Alex. And I asked the captain, out of every 10 hydrants you attach to today, on average, how many are you getting full water from? He says little to none.
Okay, there's no water. Why is there no water? Well, it was properly explained. Now, this woman doesn't seem dumb. The woman who's going to explain it, although she has a Puerto Rican accent, which makes us kind of go like, ooh, like what is she all about? Her name is Janice Quinones. She's the chief executive officer and the chief engineer. She actually is an engineer. She has she's got a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. She graduated from a school in Puerto Rico, so I don't know how good that is, but I'm just saying she's got a bachelor's in this space. She also has an MBA, and she has a master's of advanced studies in international relations, and she's a licensed professional engineer in 5 different states. So being a professional engineer, being a PE, that's no slouch move. That is usually an objective standard. If you meet it, you're generally probably pretty good at what you do. At least she was. The problem is it doesn't mean that you're going to be a great manager. Most people know that if you go to engineering school, you're probably not going to actually work in the engineering field. Most people end up becoming project managers because they can see systems. That's what engineering school teaches you. How do I know that? How do you know that, Kyle? I spent 2 years and change in mechanical engineering school. I took, a bunch of semesters of physics, a bunch of semesters of calculus, and I also understand the way that systems work. It made sense to me. I've always had a mechanical mind. I just didn't go out there and finish it. Engineers, as you guys can imagine, not exactly my people. She's really pretty. There's not very many really pretty female engineers out there in the world, so who knows what that means either. But she doesn't sound like she's wrong. The question is was she empowered to be able to do the management, or were they doing these things? I will say on the upside, in her bio, actually, let me put it on the screen here. I think I've got it on the screen. In her bio, did I get rid of it? That'd be a shame. I might have gotten rid of it. No, there it is. There's her picture. Again, I'm making her forehead look too big because that's just the only picture I could find that would sit on. Pretty lady. Reasonable background. She does not say anything about diversity, not in her entire bio, which is from the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Okay, here's the reason why there's no water, as explained. I think she has a grasp of the problem. I don't know that they have a grasp on the solution.
We ran out of water in the first tank about 4:45 p.m. yesterday. We ran out of water in the second tank about 8:30 p.m. and the third tank about 3 a.m. this morning. Those tanks help with the pressure on the fire hydrants and the hills of Palisades. And because we were pushing so much water in our trunk line, and so much water was being used before it can get to the tanks. We were not able to fill the tanks fast enough, so the consumption of water was faster than we can provide water in our trunk line. So I want to make sure that you understand there's water on the trunk line. It just cannot get up the hill because we cannot fill the tanks fast enough.
What is the number of hydrants that could not get water because of these pressure issues? What percentage of the system in Pacific Palisades wasn't getting service at that point?
We were trying to keep water at all altitudes on the Palisades, and I think about 3 in the morning, that's when the hydrants went dry above the Brentwood area. We are able to push water on that trunk line on the east side of that, and we have some water on the high.
Okay, you can only listen to that for so long. Does she sound brilliant? No. A lot of engineers are not good communicators. Is she breaking the problem down pretty low? Yeah, that's a pretty low level of discussion. It doesn't mean she's incompetent, by the way. And like I said, no indication that she's just terrible at it. So she's got 25 years of experience. She was at PG&E, which means she probably worked at a company that cared about profits. I think PG&E does. Full disclosure, my grandmother retired out of there. No, sorry, my grandfather did. My grandmother was at the other one. She was at Ma Bell. Anyway, the fun thing for me right now is watching bad policies come home to roost. I don't want to revel in it, but I do want to say that there's a possibility. What was that thing we talked about at the beginning of the show? What was the concept? It's called ecological succession. This is what ecological succession looks like. Here we go with it. LA Times owner blames mayor for cutting fire department budget ahead of wildflowers. Competence matters, he says. Okay, this is a Fox News story. Fox News reporting that the owner of the LA Times, a person named Dr. Pat Soon-Shiong, reminded followers how competence matters following LA Mayor Karen Bass's ongoing failure during the Pacific Palisades fires. If you guys don't know, again, California is on fire. Our hearts go out to those. Here's the funny thing. Who is this lady Karen Bass? And how did she get into office? She used to be a congressperson. I've met her senior advisor on Africa, of all things, which is relevant only in the next clip we're going to play here. Do you want to know something funny? That's the first funny thing. The first funny thing is that May 1st, 2022, endorsement, Karen Bass for Los Angeles mayor. Who is it? It's the Los Angeles Times. It's the Times editorial board. May 1st, 2022. I went looking for these because I knew they endorsed her. I absolutely knew it. They got behind this lady. Today, competence counts, but not then. So there she is, being endorsed. We've seen all these things. We've been here before. It's time for an opportunity. We need Karen Bass. She's the right solution. Bring her home from Washington so she can bring Washington here to California. And then guess what? They did it again. They flippin' did it again in October 13th, 2022. The Times editorial board. We need Karen Bass. Endorsement. Los Angeles mayor. It's never an easy job. But at this challenging moment, when the public feels pessimistic and angry, when there's a homelessness crisis, what we need is a woman that has the time and the job, the skills of Karen Bass, Democrat Los Angeles, who spent her whole career working to bring people together and bridging racial divides and making the world greater for Los Angelians. Now, who the heck is Karen Bass? I want to let you know that I, in fact, did fact-check this little video that I'm going to play for you. This is straight out of her own Wikipedia. There is plenty of documentation. At the bottom of the screen, what you see, she visited Cuba 8 times in the 1970s. This guy is breaking it down. Who is this Karen Bass character that was endorsed by the Los Angeles Times and then later is now being told competence counts? Did they care when they knew who she was? She's not been a shrinking violet from this sort of thing. She has been well known as a real legitimate commie. And I don't use that word like she's a commie because I don't agree with her politics. No, she's a freaking communist. And she has been for like all of her life. Watch.
November 7, 1983. Remember this date, but first, let me introduce you to Karen Bass. Back in the 1970s, community activist Karen Bass went on at least 15 trips to Cuba, many with a group known as the Venceremos Brigade, a Marxist group started by the Castro regime to subvert American interests, weaken democracies, and spread communism around the world. Founded in 1969, the Venceremos Brigade organized trips to Cuba every year for half a century. They attracted the most radicalized and delusional segments of the American left, including overtly Maoist and pro-Soviet communist groups. In fact, a Los Angeles police investigator who infiltrated the group testified to Congress saying that to be a member of the brigade, you had to be confirmed as a Marxist-Leninist, as a brigadista, and then moving up the ranks to organizer for the Venceremos Brigade. Karen Bass visited Cuba every 6 months. Their mission? To radicalize young, impressionable American leftists in terrorist tactics and guerrilla warfare. Members of the Venceremos Brigade were even taught how to make bombs.
Jesus Christ!
Karen Bass admits, on her many pilgrimages to Cuba, she went to see Fidel Castro speak several times, even calling him charismatic, and upon his death, praised him, saying, "The passing of Commandant en Jefe is a great loss to the people of Cuba, even though the people of Cuba see him as a dictator who impoverished their island."
I'll post the rest of this over on the locals channel. It's KyleSeraphin.com if you guys want to join up over there. This will be on the open piece, part of our show notes today. Again, I think it's worth noting the Los Angeles Times was more than happy to endorse this woman 2 times. Primary in the final challenge in November in 2022. And here we go. What do you think is going to happen next? Of course they're going to suck at it. Now, is this a fire that nobody could have predicted? No, it's not. It's totally predictable. I've got 2 examples, 2 people. Again, we're going to comedians. How about let's hear it from Joe Rogan, who said it's one of the reasons why he left California. It's one of the reasons why he left Los Angeles, in addition to the bad policies. Okay? They said it out there right away. And then also Donald Trump. And he's not just dunking on these people. He's pointing out that failed leadership inevitably is going to lead to crisis and chaos for these people. Before we get there, how about we talk quickly about coffee? You guys can tell how amped up I am right now. Let me tell you about a coffee company that's shaking up the world, and it is called Blackout Coffee. Blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. Not your typical run-of-the-mill brew from a corporate giant that doesn't share your values. They're probably pissed about this too. They're bold, unapologetic, America first, and this month they're making it easier than ever for you to get coffee, tea, cocoa, you name it, they've got it. Go over there to Blackout Coffee. They're running sales all month long using the promo code KYLE. Again, blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. Doesn't matter if it's a bag of premium roasted coffee, if you're into a delicious hot cocoa, maybe you got kids, maybe you want to give a gift of specialty teas for someone. There's a Valentine's Day coming up, all kinds of other things. You know, maybe you got a wedding anniversary like my folks do. Let's not forget, they've got gear, they've got mugs, they've got shirts, they've got things that are designed to make a statement, because when you're enjoying great coffee, it should look as good as it tastes. Don't wait. Head over to blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle right now. Stock up. Get yourself ready for the new year. It's one of the few luxury items that I really do allow ourselves to spend money on. It's that and suppressors. So maybe they'll support us too. In any case, support a company that stands for what you believe in, serves up quality you can taste. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. If you guys want to get involved in that, if you want to get hyped up, you can tell I'm rolling full speed right now. That's what we're at. Okay, Joe Rogan. This is predictable. This is not like, oh God, how did this happen to us? No, people have known this. Look on the screen. He says it. There's some swear words in this, by the way. July 19th, 2024. He's doing a retrospective on what they thought was a real possibility for a real long time.
I talked to a fireman once. This is one of the reasons that freaked me out. And he was telling me, he goes, dude, one day, he goes, it's just going to be the right wind and fire's going to start in the right place and it's going to burn through LA all the way to the ocean. And there's not a fucking thing we can do about it. I go, really? He goes, yeah, we just get lucky. He goes, we get lucky with the wind. He goes, but if the wind hits the wrong way, it's just going to burn straight through LA and there's not going to be a thing we can do about it. Because these fires are so big, dude. When they're talking about like thousands of acres that are burning simultaneously with like 40-mile-an-hour winds. And the wind's just blowing embers through the air, and those embers are landing on roofs, and those houses are going up, and they're landing on bushes, and those bushes are going up, and everything's dry. And once it happens in a way where it's so spread out that there's nothing they can do.
Okay, how long has it been like this? How long has it been dry? Look, I remember wildfires going on when I was a kid, and I used to live in Ventura County. Is that right? Thousand Oaks. Guys, fact check me. It's been a long time. I was a little kid. I used to live in Thousand Oaks, and I remember seeing the hills on fire and just going like, oh man, you see the helicopters coming and dropping water. It's always been a problem. The problem is that California exacerbated their own issues. Here we go. Donald Trump, also on Joe Rogan's show. By the way, his praise of Joe Rogan is just so funny. Like, this is actually really comedic. You guys probably remember this. This is one of the things that probably turned the tide for the election, but he's talking about the same issue. And he's talking about a nemesis, Gavin Newsom, who made terrible decisions. These are predictable results. These are not like a surprise. This is what happens when you put people in that have really bad ideas. You know, like people who actually go out there and hang out with Fidel Castro in Cuba. or have Chinese spies inside of their regime, like Kathy Hochul did in New York.
But let me give you one that you may not know.
Okay.
Which I think you know everything, actually, as
That's
a
not
student,
true.
as a student of yours. but water, in Los Angeles, you can't get proper amounts of water.
Right.
And it's unbelievably expensive. And you might have a house in Beverly Hills, and they're actually thinking about rationing water. Can you believe it?
I can believe
and
it.
I was in the farm court country with some of the congressmen. We're driving up a highway, and I say, how come all this land is so barren? It's farmland, and it looked terrible. It was just brown and bad. I said, but there's always that little corner that's so green and beautiful. They said, we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why don't you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north of water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. You got to see this. We're driving up, and
All right, now he goes off on a thing talking about like Idaho and potatoes, which is kind of funny too. It's not bad. But look, he's been hammering on this. He's like, California makes terrible decisions based on really bad ideas. And the result is eventually that you're going to have all of this dry stuff burn. California hasn't put money into water infrastructure, and they've been doing government regulations. It is predictably bad. The solution is not more government. It's more hands off. Trump called it out. So here he is being asked, hey, do you think that you support federal aid for California? I think that we should do federal aid for California 100%. I don't want to see people homeless. I don't want to see people in, in a destitute crisis right after we take care of North Carolina, where the Democrats stuck it to the people of North Carolina because they happen to be those white people who would otherwise be firefighters, who also didn't have the politics of the leftists. Let's take care of North Carolina. I hope that's a big priority right up front, and I'll keep talking about it. Donald Trump's calling it out. He's like, Gavin Newsom screwed up. This is predictable. This is government. Here we go.
Do you believe that federal aid should be provided to California for as long as it takes?
Well, it's very sad because I've been trying to get Gavin Newsom to allow water to come. You'd have tremendous water up there. They send it out to the Pacific because they're trying to protect a tiny little fish, which is in other areas, by the way, called the smelt. And for the sake of a smelt, they have no water. They had no water in the fire hydrants today in Los Angeles. It was a terrible thing. And we're going to get that done. It's going to finally be done. I got it done from the federal side. And he didn't want to sign it, but it's not going to happen again like that. There's no reason. Can you imagine? You have farmers that don't have any water in California. They have plenty of water. They don't have a drought. They send it out to the Pacific.
So he's talking about the same thing he was talking about on Rogan. He's not wrong about this kind of stuff. California makes terrible decisions. Here's Gavin Newsom in 2021, like welcoming the incoming president, Joe Biden, and talking about how now they were not going to have an adversarial partner in the federal government. They were going to have a helper. It's set to the backdrop of the freaking fire that's going on in his state right now, burning some of the most expensive homes, and his voters. We're going to go in what that renewal is going to look like right after I show you Gavin Newsom, because having a fire backdrop is the best.
That's what's different now is we are committed as a team, as a partnership with the legislature and other state agencies, including now the federal government, no longer a sparring partner, but a working partner. Federal government, where we're not addressing headwinds, but tailwinds in terms of the support. A memorandum of understanding doubling our respective commitments to vegetation management and forest management and prescribed burns to support the Biden administration with resources, not just rhetoric, to help this collective cause. It's a different paradigm. It's a different framework.
Yeah, it's the same framework. It's the same paradigm. It's the same thing that you guys always did, which is that you let things happen, and then when it happens, you're like, "Oh my God, how did this happen to us?" It's the sticking the stick in your own bicycle tire or your own bicycle spokes meme. You fall over, and then you just find someone to blame, and that person you're going to blame apparently is going to be like white people. I'm sure, because they pounced on diversity. Screw that. Screw all of that nonsense. Here's Adam Carolla making sense of the madness, saying the thing that's infinitely true. He nailed it. And he lives there, and he's been pissed about this for years. So here's, I think, the brilliant wrap up on this piece. You guys are going to really appreciate how this lands. Ready?
The guys who lost their $20 million homes on the ocean side of PCH will be knee deep in the permit process. They will be trying to pull permits when the guys in the Winnebagos will have been back for months before those guys ever get a permit. As a matter of fact, good fucking luck. Because here's the deal. Alan Hamill and Suzanne Summers moved because they could not get a permit to rebuild their home of 40 years on the ocean on PCH, right? So here's what's going to happen. Let me just give you guys a little primer of what's going to happen. You know how Bill Maher seems real conservative now when he's like arguing with Jane Fonda about regulations, too many regulations, like strangling everything? Because remember, when Bill Maher tried to put solar in his house in Beverly Hills, that's when he turned against the government, because he saw what the government and the overreach of government and overregulation does. He got strangled. It took him 3 years to build a solar shack. He had a whole countdown on his show, day 1,000 since I've...
Okay, so Adam's talking about the fact that when people actually experience the consequences of their terrible decision making and their terrible ideas that are theoretical in nature, but suddenly they become very real, and you're like, oh crap. I was having a conversation with my mother-in-law last night. We're talking about my father-in-law, who's a nice man, and I like him as a person. He has terrible ideas. And all of his really bad ideas, which are basically communistic, they suddenly hit him when he had to sell a very expensive property, which had appreciated from the time he bought it by like 10x. Bought it in the 80s, held on to it, sold it the year before last, I want to say. 10x. That's a massive growth. 1,000% return on investment. And he had to take about a third of that and give it to the government in taxes, which was a lot of money, like a 7-figure dollar amount, folks. That's a really bad thing. And that's the money he's going to live on. And now it's in the government's hands. If you're a commie, you think that's great, right up until they take your money. And so what Adam is talking about is this one little funny little moment. It's that you have this idea that I'm an elite communist. I think Steve Friend says it very well. The communists that are elite and the communists in the street. The ones in the street, they want all the policies because it's going to benefit them. The elites want the policies so that somebody else will pay for it, but they want to feel good about it, but they don't want it to affect them. And when it hits them, things start changing. Let me introduce the thing I was going to tell you about. Here it is. What grows back after the fire? Evolutionary succession. There is primary and secondary. Primary and secondary succession. Things that come back. Okay? Here's the way it works. Primary succession is the growth, the natural growth. It says here, bare rock, lichens, small animals and plants and lichens, grasses and perennials. We're talking about like an actual ecosystem. Okay? The way that nature grows, God's brilliant creation. And after you have that, you can have shrubs and taller trees and things that are tolerant to shade. You start getting pines. Then you start getting deciduous trees and larger, long growth, oak and hickory, things that will sustain for a long period of time. You know what happens after that? Fire. Fire happens when the things underneath die and they are not swept out. It clears out the underbrush. So now you get a thing called secondary succession. After the fire, you've burned everything away. You've left a lot of really important raw materials there to be able to build in. It's land. It has carbon. And so you start with annual plants, and then the grasses and perennials, and the grasses and shrubs, and the small young oaks and hickories that were there before. And then they grow again into mature, and that's 150 years later. And then you have a fire again. This has been the cycle. This is like cycle of life stuff. It also happens politically. It happens that people naturally grow something incredible and amazing. They build an American economy. They build an American system that offers more freedom and more opportunity for anybody that has ever happened. And then people get real lazy. And they do stupid things. And those mature things, those mature trees, they start dropping leaves down and stuff just starts hanging out in the underbrush. And eventually it builds up and burns. And when it burns, the people that come in after it, they're going to have to do things a little bit differently, at least in order to get back up to where they were. Here's Adam Carolla radicalizing the left, laughing at them. I don't think laughing is necessarily the right answer, but we are talking about something that is evolutionary in its nature. It is a succession that happens, and there is a natural cycle that we can see it. It happens in the natural world. It also happens in human politics. That's why we get these swings. Ready?
You guys all voted for Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles. You all voted for Gavin Newsom. And now you fucking get what you get. Oh, now that your house is on fire, well, now you're thinking about something else. Now you want to know what's going on. What's going on around here? You didn't give a shit about what was going on when other people's houses were on fire, but now you care. So here's what's going to happen. All these people who were deep blue Democrats are now going to have to pull a permit to rebuild. And they're going to get the 28-year-old bitch from the Coastal Commission telling them to go fuck off. And then they're going to vote for Trump or whoever's Trumpian next. You see, they're going to get turned. They're going to get turned hard because, as I've always said, live in the rent control apartment in Santa Monica, fine, good. We know how you vote. Go deal with the city. Try to pull a permit. These are going to be thousands of homes, super wealthy people, and these people don't want to live in Van Nuys. They like it where they are. They love Malibu. They love the Palisades. They love Santa Monica. There's going to be a whole bunch of rich people, and they're going to go, I'm rebuilding, and I want to rebuild as fast as I can. And between the part where they go in to the planning commission and plan check and initially and try to pull a permit to the time the first load of lumber, the first load of 2x4s is dropped off on their lot where their house formerly stood, it's going to be 3 years. And 1,000 permits and 1,000 arguments and 1,000 discussions with the Coastal Commission, not to mention little tidbits that they didn't think about, like Carson Daly. You want a swimming pool? Yep. Got to be double hulled. Really? Yeah. Well, why? Well, what if water leaches out and gets into the groundwater table? Carson Daly had to build a swimming pool like a modern day oil tanker. Had to be like a double hulled. That's all right. It'll just cost $500,000 for a swimming pool. Like that, they're going to be, when they start getting the regulation, they're going to go nuts. And when they start running into the bureaucracy and the red tape, they're going to start going nuts, and they're going to vote for Rick Caruso next time because they want to get, that's all Trump says, is we're going to pull back the regulations, we're going to free people up. They're going to find out, they're going to get bit by their own snake, they're going to convert. You guys all voted for Karen.
All right, that's on the loop there. Yeah, they're going to get bit by their own snake. That actually means that your theoretical ideas get transferred into the real world, and when that happens, it doesn't freaking work. And it takes this stuff to happen. So we don't have to cheer it on. I don't want anybody to suffer. I don't want to see their houses. I don't care if people who have $20 million houses, I don't want their house burned down, and I don't want them having to live somewhere. But he is right. The first part of the clip, the people in the Winnebagos, if you've never seen this, there's all, the PCH, by the way, is the Pacific Coast Highway. It is a beautiful highway. I've ridden it on a motorcycle. It's like one of the moments of extreme peace that I've ever experienced. You're on a motorcycle, you're looking out over God's creation, and there's no other way to see it but just feel blessed that we have highways, that we have roads, the things our government actually is supposed to do and do well. Amazing. Of course, there's mudslides on there every once in a while where they get wiped out because they're not doing their jobs. They're not keeping things up. We've been leaning on the backs of people who did a lot of hard work for a very long time. Again, here's the succession. We've been leaning on the original mature oaks, and we got lazy, and we are now going into the burn cycle. And when the burn cycle happens, it's very chaotic. That's okay. Let it burn. Let it come back. When these people run into government regulations that tell them it's $500,000 flipping dollars to build a pool in your own backyard, it doesn't matter if you're a multimillionaire. That's a ton of money for a pool that you're going to use 10 days out of the year, because everybody who's ever had a pool knows you spend more time cleaning the damn thing than you do swimming in it. Unless you have friends over all the time, right? Or you're paying for someone to come and maintain it. This is not the worst thing that's ever happened. It will radicalize California. It just depends on how many places it hits. It needs to hit the bluest places, the wealthiest people, so they get to experience the government that they wanted, and they will realize that that is not the government that they want anymore. Once they run into the real world applications, the non-theoretical. That's my argument to you. Don't delight in the suffering of others. That is truly evil and gross. I think I understand Adams because he's frustrated with human beings that he actually knows, the same way I'm frustrated with the FBI. So we don't want that. But I think you could recognize that this is not always the worst thing in the world, and that the worst turns have almost always moved us into new spaces and new opportunities. That's been my experience. I think many of you will have the same. I'm going to give you sort of a funny take. We talked about Gen X. I've been doing some Gen X stuff. I don't know why. Sam Kinison is a great comedian. Was a great comedian, kind of a creepy looking dude. Classic for the time that he was doing it, talking about where the food is. So we're going to go there. But I want to say thanks for all of you guys for just joining us, being part of the program. Make sure that you have liked it. Make sure you've shared it. Let's see here. I've got a little banner here. This is the place you can follow us. It's rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin, where you can like and share and subscribe. You can do the same thing over on X. Some of you have. Thanks so much for all the new followers over there on X. Locals is our website where we interact together, and that's KyleSeraphin.com. And lastly, you can find us on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, on Apple, and so on. And you guys can share over there. There's video on the Spotify if you guys want to watch this somewhere else and you want like a different presentation without commercials. All right, here's our last little take. This is the cleanse of the palate, the way to kind of go into it. Again, I won't be on tomorrow, so I'm reminding you again, I will see you on Sunday for the Sunday special, and I'll be on Timcast if you guys just can't handle it. We'll be doing the culture war on Timcast, so look for that. Here is Sam Kinison.
If you want to stop world hunger, stop sending them food. Don't send these people another bite, folks. You want to send them something? You want to help? Send them U-Hauls. Send them U-Hauls, some luggage, and send them a guy out there that goes, hey, we've been driving out here every day with your food for like the last, 30, 40 years. And we were driving out here a day across the desert, and it occurred to us there wouldn't be world hunger if you people would live where the food is! You live in a desert! You understand that? You live in a fucking desert! Nothing grows out here! Nothing's gonna grow out here! You see this? Huh? See this? This is sand! Yeah! It's sand! You know it's gonna be 100 years from now, huh? It's gonna be sand! Take you to where the food is! We have deserts in America! We just don't live in them, asshole!
He's not wrong. He really isn't. Sorry. It's kind of dark. Okay, let me give you a last little thing. This is the shaming that needs to happen. All communists know the struggle session. Here's Karen Bass getting a struggle session from her own type of press, who probably endorsed her the first time around. Remember, she was in Ghana when this broke out. What the hell is she doing in Ghana if she is going to be the mayor of Los Angeles? Ask yourself those questions. We're going to go out the door with this, and I'll just kind of smile on it. God bless you. Thanks so much. This is kind of a different little order of things, but I like it anyway.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster? No apology for them? Do you think you should have been visiting Ghana while this was unfolding back home?
The struggle is real, folks. The struggle session is real, too. How fast can we run away from these reporters? All right, God bless you. We'll see you on the other side. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.